Current projections for 2027 show Social Security checks are on track for a 3.8% increase. For the more than 75 million Americans who receive benefits, that translates to an average of $74 extra every month. Federal law mandates this payout increase based on a strict mathematical reaction to global inflation data recorded during the previous summer. For example, if a conflict in Iran causes gas prices to spike in July, that data point ripples through the government's formula and forces the monthly benefit higher the following year. However, this mechanism creates a massive contradiction. The same formula that protects retirees from rising costs is simultaneously draining the system's reserves. Because benefits are now rising faster than the tax revenue that pays for them, the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund is expected to exhaust its reserves in the fourth quarter of 2032. Focusing only on the relief coming in 2027 hides the immediate danger. If Congress fails to update the formula within 7 years, every beneficiary will face an automatic 17% cut. At the center of this crisis is the cost of living adjustment, or COLA. This is the specific tool the Social Security Administration uses to match benefits to inflation. This equation shows the calculation. The baseline variable is the CPI-W, measuring the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners. To prevent the 2032 depletion, the government maintains a long-range solvency menu, alternative variables that could be swapped in to change the final payout. Shifting a single fraction of a percent in this mathematical formula completely changes the financial fate of millions of retirees. Treating a social safety net as a cold equation creates an unavoidable trade-off between the survival of the trust fund and the survival of the people who depend on it. This chart visualizes the trade-off. A 1% reduction extends the trust fund past 2032, but retiree checks dip sharply, increasing poverty risks. Conversely, the CPI-E formula skyrockets payouts for healthcare, but crashes the trust fund to zero much sooner. Other proposals include adding a full percentage point to the yearly boost for any beneficiary who lives past a certain life expectancy. The paradox is that maximizing the survival of seniors through these inflation boosts alone would destroy the remaining federal reserves. Manipulating the formula in isolation is a zero-sum game. It simply moves the financial burden from the federal government's ledger onto the individual retiree. There are variables on the revenue side as well. Representative John Larson's bill proposes funding a benefit boost by applying the payroll tax to incomes over $400,000. The political chances for this are slim. GovTrack currently gives the Larson bill a 0% chance of passing. This leaves the most drastic variable, means testing. This would involve stopping inflation adjustments entirely for retirees with a high modified adjusted gross income. Theoretically, stripping protection from high-income earners could balance the math and keep the fund solvent without a broad tax increase. But without the political will to raise taxes or the willingness to cut benefits for the wealthy, the equation remains broken. The fourth quarter of 2032 is no longer a theoretical date. We can see the rushing sand in the hourglass, the top chamber nearly empty. The 3.8% increase in 2027 is a temporary relief measure for retirees, even as the trust fund's total reserves continue to drop towards zero. Solving the problem requires more than a one-year patch. It requires rewriting the mathematical equations that define the cost of living in America. In a system governed by automatic mathematical triggers, inaction triggers a 17% benefit cut by default.